My name is Sierra, and I am 19 years old. I started my freshman year at college with chronic pain that doctors diagnosed when I was 16. 2 years ago, my dad Thomas remarried to Amanda. From the beginning, she doubted my condition was real. I thought that was bad enough until I discovered she had convinced my father to stop my medical appointments and medications. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain I had ever experienced. Before I tell you how I discovered my stepmom's betrayal, let me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever dealt with someone who didn't believe your pain was real. I grew up in a loving home with my parents, Thomas and Linda. We lived in a modest suburban house with a backyard that had the perfect climbing tree. My childhood memories are filled with weekend camping trips, holiday traditions, and my mom teaching me to bake her famous chocolate chip cookies. Dad would come home from his engineering job and swing me around the living room, calling me his little princess. They were a team supporting each other and creating a warm, secure environment for me. Everything changed when I was 15. Mom started feeling tired all the time, and within 3 months, doctors diagnosed her with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The disease progressed rapidly. I watched my vibrant, energetic mother wither away in hospital rooms that smelled of antiseptic and despair. Dad and I took turns sitting with her, holding her hand and pretending we weren't falling apart inside. She died on a Tuesday morning in October. The leaves outside her hospital window were turning golden, her favorite time of year. Dad and I were both there, watching helplessly as she took her final breath. The following weeks passed in a blur of funeral arrangements, casseroles from neighbors and relatives who didn't know what to say. Dad and I became even closer through our shared grief. We would sit together in the evenings, sometimes talking about Mom, sometimes just being quiet together. About 6 months after Mom died, I started experiencing strange symptoms. It began with fatigue that sleep couldn't cure and aches that seemed to migrate throughout my body. I brushed it off as stress, or perhaps depression from losing Mom. But then came days when even getting out of bed felt like climbing a mountain. My joints ached as though I had run a marathon. Sometimes my skin felt so sensitive that even the weight of my clothes caused pain. Dad noticed my struggles and immediately took action. Thus began our year-long journey through the medical system, trying to find answers. We visited our family doctor, who ran basic tests that came back normal. He referred us to a rheumatologist, who ordered more tests. Those results were inconclusive. So we saw a neurologist, an endocrinologist, and even a psychiatrist who suggested my symptoms might be psychosomatic grief. I remember one particularly discouraging appointment when a doctor suggested I was simply seeking attention after my mother's death. Dad stood up, his face flushed with anger, and said, "My daughter is not making this up. Find another explanation or refer us to someone who will." He never doubted me, not for a moment. Finally, after countless blood tests, scans, and specialists, I received diagnoses of fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. The rheumatologist explained these were invisible illnesses with no single definitive test, but were diagnosed based on symptoms and ruling out other conditions. She developed a treatment plan that included medication for pain and sleep, physical therapy, and lifestyle modifications. Learning to manage my conditions became our new normal. Dad researched everything about fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. He helped me track my symptoms, identify triggers, and manage my limited energy. He installed a shower chair when standing became too difficult on bad days. He learned to cook anti-inflammatory foods. When I had to miss school because of flare-ups, he worked with my teachers to make sure I kept up with assignments. High school became challenging in ways beyond academics. Friends didn't understand why I canceled plans or needed to rest during social gatherings. Some stopped inviting me altogether. Others suggested I just needed to exercise more or try positive thinking. Dad became my advocate, explaining my condition to teachers and parents when necessary. He joined online support groups for parents of children with chronic illness, seeking advice on how to help me navigate this new reality. Through it all, our bond strengthened. When I graduated high school, Dad threw me a small celebration that carefully accommodated my energy limitations. He presented me with a journal where he had documented our medical journey, including notes from every appointment and research he had gathered. "I want you to have this," he said, "so you always remember how hard you fought and how proud I am of you." I decided to attend the local university so I could live at home and continue with my established medical care. Dad converted our downstairs guest room into a bedroom for me to minimize stair climbing. We had settled into a routine of managing my condition together, and for the first time since my diagnosis, I felt hopeful about the future. 2 years after Mom died, Dad mentioned he had met someone at a company charity event. Her name was Amanda, and she worked in upper management at a financial firm. He seemed nervous, telling me, fidgeting with his coffee cup and avoiding eye contact. "I want you to meet her," he said. "But only if you're comfortable with that." I was actually thrilled. The sadness in his eyes had lingered for so long after Mom passed, and I wanted him to be happy again. I told him I would love to meet her, and we arranged a dinner at our home the following weekend. Amanda arrived exactly on time, dressed in an elegant black dress and carrying a bouquet of flowers for me. She was beautiful, with shoulder-length auburn hair and confident green eyes. At 40, she was 10 years younger than Dad, but carried herself with a polished sophistication that made her seem ageless. "Sierra, your father has told me so much about you," she said, embracing me in a cloud of expensive perfume. "I have been looking forward to meeting the daughter he adores." That first evening went smoothly. Amanda asked thoughtful questions about my interests and classes. She laughed at Dad's terrible jokes and brought a warmth to our dining room that had been missing. I caught Dad looking at her with a softness in his eyes I hadn't seen since Mom was alive. When she asked about my health, I gave her my practiced explanation of fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. She nodded sympathetically, saying her cousin also had an autoimmune condition. "It must be so difficult," she said, "especially for someone so young." Over the next few months, Amanda became a regular presence in our home. She and Dad attended my high school graduation together. She brought thoughtful gifts like soft blankets and herbal teas. When she stayed overnight, she would make breakfast for all of us, remembering my dietary restrictions without being reminded. Looking back, there were subtle signs I missed, like when she commented how normal I looked when I was having a good day. "I would never guess you were sick," she said in what I took as a compliment at the time. Or the way she would study me when I took my medication, a slight furrow between her perfectly shaped eyebrows. 6 months after they began dating, Dad told me he wanted to propose to Amanda. We sat in our backyard as the summer evening cooled around us. "I will always love your mother," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I think I have room in my heart for Amanda too. How would you feel about that?" I hugged him tightly. "Mom would want you to be happy," I said, "and I like Amanda." It was true. Despite occasional moments of discomfort, I genuinely believed Amanda cared for both of us. The wedding was small and tasteful, held in the garden of a local historic home. I served as Dad's best woman, standing beside him in a blue dress that matched his tie. Amanda had included me in many of the planning details, asking my opinion on flowers and music. During the reception, she pulled me aside and presented me with a delicate silver bracelet. "I know I can never replace your mother," she said, "but I hope we can build our own special relationship." The changes began subtly after they returned from their honeymoon in Bermuda. Amanda moved into our home, bringing with her expensive furniture and artwork that slowly replaced our more modest belongings. She suggested converting my mom's old sewing room into her home office, boxing up the remaining materials before I could voice an opinion. At dinner one evening, Amanda brought up the subject of my medical expenses. "I was reviewing our finances," she said, cutting her chicken into precise pieces, "and I was surprised at how much your treatments cost." Dad looked uncomfortable. "Health is our priority, honey." "Of course," Amanda replied smoothly. "I just wonder if we might research more cost-effective alternatives. Some of these specialists charge outrageous fees." That was the first direct challenge to my medical care, but certainly not the last. Amanda began scheduling family activities that coincidentally conflicted with my doctor appointments. "Oh, did I get the date wrong?" she would say, looking genuinely distressed. "I was so looking forward to us all attending together." Dad would look torn, and sometimes we would reschedule my appointments to accommodate Amanda's plans. Other times, he would suggest I go to appointments alone so he could accompany Amanda. Gradually, he stopped attending my medical visits altogether. About 3 months after the wedding, we had an extended family dinner with Amanda's parents and sister. The conversation turned to my college plans, and I mentioned choosing the local university, partly to maintain continuity with my healthcare team. "Healthcare team," Amanda repeated with a slight laugh. "It sounds so dramatic, doesn't it? Sierra has quite the collection of doctors." Her mother leaned forward with interest. "Oh, what's wrong, dear?" Before I could answer, Amanda said, "She has fibromyalgia, or at least that's what one doctor said after all the tests for real conditions came back negative." The table fell silent. I felt my face burn with humiliation and anger. Dad cleared his throat. "Sierra's conditions are very real and challenging. We're fortunate to have found specialists who understand how to treat them." Amanda placed her hand over his. "Of course they are, darling. I just think sometimes doctors are too quick to give a diagnosis when they can't find anything concrete. I read an article about how many of these syndromes are actually related to stress or trauma. That night, I overheard Amanda on the phone in her office. I had come downstairs for a glass of water and paused when I heard my name. "She's such a drama queen," Amanda was saying. "Everything is about her pain and her fatigue. Thomas can't see that she's just seeking attention. She had him wrapped around her finger before I came along." I stood frozen in the hallway, my water forgotten. "Of course, the timing is suspicious," Amanda continued. "Right after her mother died. Please. She saw how much attention her mother got when she was sick, and now she wants the same thing. I'm trying to help Thomas see it, but he's blinded by guilt over her mother's death." I retreated to my room, shaking with hurt and rage. The next morning, I tried to talk to Dad when Amanda was in the shower. "Dad, I heard Amanda on the phone last night. She doesn't believe I'm really sick." He sighed, looking suddenly older. "Sierra, honey, Amanda is still adjusting to our family. She cares about you, but she comes from a background where people didn't talk about illness. Give her time." But time only made things worse. Dad, who had once been my fiercest advocate, began to echo Amanda's doubts. "Are you sure you can't make it to dinner?" he would ask when I was having a flare-up. "You seemed fine this morning." When I needed a prescription refilled, he would suggest trying to go without it. "Maybe you're becoming too dependent on these medications. Have you tried meditation instead?" My specialist appointments were rescheduled and then canceled. When I asked about it, Dad said we needed to reassess the necessity of seeing so many doctors. My medication bottles disappeared from the bathroom cabinet. Amanda claimed she had accidentally thrown them out while organizing. The safe, supportive home I had known was slowly transforming into a place where I felt questioned and invalidated. And the person I had trusted most in the world was becoming a stranger before my eyes. I started my freshman year at university with growing anxiety about my health care. The stress of adapting to college life while managing my conditions was challenging enough without the added uncertainty of my medical support system. My dorm room was small but comfortable, and my roommate Jade was understanding about my need for regular rest periods. She was a pre-law student with a passionate interest in patient advocacy, which seemed like an incredible stroke of luck given my circumstances. "My aunt has lupus," she explained when I told her about my conditions. "I've seen how hard she has to fight to get proper care sometimes." The first month of classes went relatively well. I had arranged a reduced course load and scheduled classes with breaks in between to rest. The university's accessibility services provided accommodations like extended time for assignments when needed. I was cautiously optimistic about balancing my education with my health needs. Then I realized my prescriptions weren't being refilled. Each time I called Dad, he had a different excuse. "I'll get to it tomorrow." The pharmacy said there was an issue with the insurance. "Let's talk about it this weekend." Weekend visits home became increasingly tense. Amanda would make pointed comments about how college stress was probably exacerbating my symptoms. She always used air quotes when referring to my condition. Dad would change the subject when I brought up medical appointments. One evening, I directly asked about seeing my rheumatologist, whose appointment had been canceled without my knowledge. "Dr. Miller charges $300 per visit even with our insurance," Dad said, not meeting my eyes. "Amanda and I have been discussing whether that's really necessary when your regular doctor could probably monitor things." "My regular doctor was the one who referred me to Dr. Miller because fibromyalgia requires specialized care," I argued. Amanda sighed loudly from across the room. "Sierra, we're trying to help you become more independent. In the real world, people learn to manage without running to specialists for every ache and pain." "This isn't every ache and pain," I said, my voice rising despite my effort to stay calm. "This is a documented chronic condition." "Documented by doctors who get paid to find problems," Amanda muttered. Dad placed his hand on my shoulder. "Let's not argue. We'll figure something out." But nothing was figured out. My symptoms began worsening as I went without proper medication and treatment. The persistent pain that had once been managed now kept me awake at night. My fatigue deepened until getting to classes became an almost insurmountable challenge. I started falling behind in coursework despite accommodations. One Wednesday afternoon, I experienced a particularly severe flare-up during my biology lab. The fluorescent light seemed to drill into my skull and every joint throbbed. The teaching assistant noticed my distress and helped me to the campus health center. The nurse took my vitals and asked about my medical history. When I explained my diagnoses and treatment history, she frowned. "You should be under regular care for these conditions. When did you last see your specialist?" It's been about 4 months, I admitted. There have been some issues with appointments. She tried calling the emergency contact in my file, my father. When he didn't answer, she left a message explaining the situation. I can give you something for the immediate pain, she said, but you really need to follow up with your regular doctors. I called Dad myself after leaving the health center, but the call went to voicemail. I texted him that I needed to talk about my medication and didn't receive a response. This had become our new normal. My medical needs were increasingly met with silence or deflection. The following week, I had to miss 3 days of classes because of pain and exhaustion. Jade brought me notes and soup from the dining hall. "This isn't right, Sierra," she said, watching me struggle to sit up in bed. "You need your medication." I had been trying to handle the situation myself, reluctant to admit how bad things had become. But Jade's concern broke through my facade. I confessed everything: the canceled appointments, the missing medications, Amanda's comments, and my father's growing distance. "That's medical neglect," Jade said firmly. "You're 19, so you can legally make your own medical decisions, but if you're on your dad's insurance and he's blocking access to care, that's a serious problem." She helped me contact my rheumatologist's office directly. The receptionist sounded confused when I asked about my canceled appointments. "Let me check your file," she said. After a long pause, she continued. "It looks like your father called to cancel your last 3 appointments. He also informed us that you would be switching to a different provider closer to your school." My heart sank. "That's not true. I didn't know about any of this." "I'm sorry to hear that," she said, her voice softening. "There's another note here that there was an insurance issue. Your coverage was apparently terminated for our services." Jade lent me money for a taxi to the hospital when the pain became unbearable the next day. The emergency room doctor gave me temporary prescriptions, but emphasized the need for ongoing specialized care. "Discontinuing these medications abruptly can cause significant problems," he explained. "You need to get back on a regular treatment plan as soon as possible." I decided it was time to confront my father directly. Instead of waiting for the weekend, I told Jade I was going home on Thursday, when I knew both Dad and Amanda would be there. I didn't call ahead. I needed to see their unfiltered reactions. When my taxi pulled up to the house, both cars were in the driveway. I used my key to enter quietly. I could hear voices coming from Amanda's home office, a heated discussion. I moved closer, my heart pounding. "Thomas, we've been over this," Amanda was saying, her voice firm. "Sierra is recreating her mother's illness to get your attention. Dr. Benson completely agrees with me." "Who is Dr. Benson?" my father asked. "You never mentioned this doctor before." "He's a psychologist colleague who specializes in family dynamics. He says this kind of behavior is classic attention-seeking. Sierra watched how much attention Linda got when she was sick, and now she's mimicking symptoms for the same response." I felt sick hearing my mother's name used this way. "But her doctors diagnosed her," Dad said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Doctors who make money from continuing to see her," Amanda countered. "They found nothing concrete in any test. These syndromes are just labels for symptoms they can't explain. The best thing we can do for Sierra is stop enabling this behavior. She needs to learn to be strong and independent, not a perpetual patient." "What if she really is in pain, though?" Dad asked, and my heart lifted slightly at the doubt in his voice. "Then she needs to learn to manage it without becoming dependent on drugs and doctors," Amanda said. "My father had back pain for 40 years and never took more than aspirin. Sierra needs to develop the same resilience. Coddling her will only make her weaker." "She called from the University Health Center last week," Dad said. "Maybe I should call her back." "And undermine everything we're trying to do." Amanda's voice rose. "Thomas, you have to be firm. If you give in every time she claims to be in pain, she'll never break this cycle. Do you want her to spend her life as a victim?" I couldn't listen anymore. I pushed the door open, making both of them jump. "Sierra!" Dad exclaimed, his face paling. "We didn't know you were coming home today." "Clearly," I said, my voice shaking with anger and hurt. "I heard everything." Amanda recovered first, smoothing her skirt as she stood. "Sierra, this isn't what it sounds like." "It sounds exactly like you've been convincing my father that I'm faking my illness," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "It sounds like you're the reason my prescriptions haven't been refilled and my appointments have been canceled." Dad stood up, his expression a mixture of guilt and confusion. "Sierra, honey, we're just trying to do what's best for you." "By deciding I'm lying about being sick, by cutting off my medical care without even talking to me about it." My voice rose with each question. The betrayal felt like a physical blow. Your father and I are concerned about the path you're on, Amanda said, adopting a reasonable tone that made my blood boil. Becoming dependent on medications at your age, letting these diagnoses define you, it's not healthy. What's not healthy is living with untreated chronic pain, I shot back. What's not healthy is having to go to the emergency room because my own father won't refill my prescriptions. Dad's eyes widened. You went to the emergency room when… Yesterday, I've been in so much pain I could barely get out of bed for days. Jade had to lend me money for a taxi because I couldn't even walk to the bus stop. If it was that bad, why didn't you call me? Dad asked. I did. I called and texted multiple times. You never responded. I pulled out my phone, showing him the log of unanswered calls. And apparently, you were too busy canceling my doctor appointments to check your messages. Amanda stepped between us. Sierra, I think you're being dramatic right now. Taking this accusatory tone isn't helpful. Something snapped inside me. Dramatic. I'm being dramatic. You've been systematically undermining my medical care and turning my father against me, and I'm being dramatic for being upset about it. I'm trying to help you, Amanda insisted. I've seen how these kinds of diagnoses can become self-fulfilling prophecies. People start to identify as sick, and then they never get better. You don't get better from chronic conditions, I nearly shouted. That's what chronic means. You manage them, you adapt, but they don't just disappear because you decide to ignore them. Dad raised his hands placatingly. Let's all calm down. Sierra Amanda has only been trying to help. She's been doing research. What kind of research? I demanded. Has she talked to my doctors? Has she read peer-reviewed medical journals about fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome? Or has she been reading random websites that confirm her belief that I'm making this all up? Amanda's face flushed. I don't appreciate your tone. And I don't appreciate you telling my father I'm faking an illness to be like my dead mother. The words hung in the air, sharp and terrible. Dad looked stricken. Amanda, did you really say that? For the first time, Amanda appeared flustered. I said that the timing of her symptoms after Linda's death was something to consider. It's not uncommon for children to unconsciously mimic. Stop it. I cut her off. Just stop. Mom died of pancreatic cancer. I have fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. They're completely different conditions with completely different symptoms. The only thing they have in common is that they happen to the same family. I turned to my father, tears streaming down my face now. Dad, do you really believe I would lie about being in pain? That I would make up symptoms and take medications I don't need? Is that who you think I am? He looked torn, his eyes moving between Amanda and me. His hesitation was answer enough, and it broke something inside me. I trusted you, I whispered. When everyone else, doctors, teachers, even some of my friends, questioned whether my pain was real, you believed me. You fought for me. What changed? Sierra, it's not that simple, Dad began. Actually, it is that simple, I interrupted. Either you believe me or you don't. Amanda stepped forward again. Sierra, your father and I have had access to your medical records. There's nothing in any of your tests that indicates a physical problem. I froze. What do you mean you've had access to my medical records? I never gave permission for you to see those. Amanda faltered momentarily. Your father has access as your parent. I'm 19. That's a violation of privacy laws. I turned to Dad. Did you share my medical information with her? Dad looked uncomfortable. Amanda has been helping manage our insurance and bills. She needed some information. That doesn't give her the right to access my full medical records. I was shaking now with anger or pain or both. Amanda's voice took on a wounded tone. I'm just trying to be a mother to you, Sierra. I care about your well-being. You are not my mother, I said, each word deliberate and clear. My mother believed me when I said I was in pain. My mother would never have cut off my medical care or told people I was faking an illness. Amanda's eyes narrowed. This is exactly the problem. You're still so attached to your mother's memory that you can't accept anyone else in your life. You're jealous of my relationship with your father. The absurdity of her accusation left me momentarily speechless. The room seemed to tilt around me, black spots dancing at the edges of my vision. The familiar but recently intensified pain radiated through my joints, and I felt the telltale weakness in my limbs that preceded a severe crash. Sierra, Dad's voice seemed to come from far away. Are you all right? You're very pale. I tried to respond, but the words wouldn't come. The stress of the confrontation, the revelation of their betrayal, the weeks without proper medication, it all culminated in that moment. My legs buckled beneath me, and the last thing I heard was my father shouting my name as the floor rushed up to meet me. I woke to the steady beep of a heart monitor and the distinctive antiseptic smell of a hospital room. For a moment I was disoriented, unsure how I had gotten there. Then the memories flooded back, the confrontation, Amanda's admission, my father's betrayal. "She's awake," said a familiar voice. Jade was sitting beside my bed, her textbooks spread across her lap. She reached for my hand. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck." I mumbled, my mouth dry. "What happened?" "You collapsed at your dad's house. They called an ambulance." Jade helped me take a sip of water. "I got worried when you didn't answer my texts, so I came by the house. I arrived just as they were putting you in the ambulance." I closed my eyes, embarrassment washing over me. "Great. So Amanda got to see me proving her point by being dramatically carried out on a stretcher." "Actually," Jade said, "your collapse kind of proved the opposite. Your dad called your rheumatologist from the ambulance. Dr. Reynolds is here, and she's pretty upset about the interruption in your treatment." As if summoned by her name, Dr. Reynolds entered the room. She was a small, fierce woman in her 50s who had been treating me since my diagnosis. "Sierra," she said, approaching the bed. "I'm relieved to see you awake. You gave everyone quite a scare." "I'm sorry," I said automatically. "Don't apologize," she replied firmly. "This situation was not your fault. Your father and I have had a very frank discussion about the dangers of discontinuing your treatment plan without medical supervision." She checked my vitals and made notes in my chart. "The abrupt cessation of your medications combined with the stress you've been under triggered a severe flare-up. Your blood work shows signs of inflammation, and your blood pressure was dangerously high when you were admitted." A knock at the door interrupted her. Dad stood in the doorway, his face haggard with worry. "May I come in?" Dr. Reynolds looked to me for permission. I nodded, though my stomach knotted with anxiety. Dad approached the bed cautiously. "How are you feeling, Sierra?" "I've been better," I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Dr. Reynolds turned to him. "Mr. Williams, as I was explaining to Sierra, her collapse was a direct result of the interruption in her treatment. Fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome require consistent management. When that management is suddenly removed, the body can essentially go into shock." Dad nodded, looking ashamed. "I understand that now. Dr. Reynolds has been very clear about the consequences of our decisions." "Our decisions?" I questioned. "Or Amanda's decisions that you went along with?" He flinched. "That's not entirely fair." "Isn't it?" Jade spoke up unexpectedly. "Mr. Williams, I respect that you're Sierra's father, but what happened here goes beyond bad medical decisions. It's patient abandonment." "Jade?" I began, surprised by her directness. "No, Sierra, he needs to hear this." Jade put aside her textbook and stood. "I'm studying healthcare law, Mr. Williams. What you and your wife did, cutting off Sierra's access to medical care, canceling appointments without her knowledge, not refilling necessary prescriptions that could have serious legal implications." Dad's face paled. "We thought we were helping." "By deciding she was faking her illness." Jade's voice was calm but unyielding. "By sharing her private medical information with your wife without Sierra's consent." Dr. Reynolds cleared her throat. "Perhaps this discussion could wait until Sierra has had more time to rest." "No," I said, finding strength in Jade's advocacy. "I want to have this conversation now." The door opened again and Amanda walked in carrying a bouquet of flowers. Her eyes widened and the group assembled around my bed. "I didn't realize you had so many visitors," she said, her poise slightly shaken. "I just wanted to check on Sierra." The tension in the room was palpable. Dr. Reynolds straightened, her professional demeanor cooling noticeably. "Mrs. Williams, I presume I'm Dr. Reynolds, Sierra's rheumatologist. The doctor you suggested was unnecessary." Amanda's smile tightened. "I only wanted what was best for Sierra." "With all due respect," Dr. Reynolds replied, "determining what's medically best for Sierra is my job, and the job of her other specialists. We have years of training and experience in treating these conditions." "I understand that doctors have their perspectives," Amanda began, "but as family members we see things from a different angle." A nurse entered, interrupting the tense exchange. "Excuse me, Dr. Reynolds, you asked to be notified when the test results were ready." "Thank you, Marie." Dr. Reynolds turned to me. "I'll be back shortly to discuss your treatment plan." She left with a pointed look at my father. The nurse remained checking my IV and vital signs. Her presence created an awkward pause in the confrontation. When she finished and left, Amanda tried again. Sierra, I know you're upset, but I hope you can see that we were only trying to help you move beyond these limitations. By deciding they weren't real, I asked. Dad intervened. Sierra, I made a terrible mistake. Dr. Reynolds showed me the research on fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. She explained how real these conditions are, even if they don't show up on standard tests. Thomas, Amanda said sharply, we discussed this. One doctor's opinion doesn't change. It's not one doctor, he interrupted. Dr. Reynolds brought in colleagues, a neurologist and a pain specialist. They all confirmed Sierra's diagnoses are valid and that interrupting her treatment was dangerous. I looked at my father, trying to see the man who had once been my fiercest advocate. Why did you stop believing me, Dad, after everything we went through together? His eyes filled with tears. I don't know. I got confused. Amanda was so confident and she had all these articles and examples. From what sources? Jade asked pointedly. Dad looked uncomfortable. I didn't really check. Amanda's face flushed. This is ridiculous. I'm being vilified for trying to prevent Sierra from defining her entire life by an illness, for trying to help her be strong instead of dependent. Mrs. Williams, Jade said, her voice level, managing a chronic condition isn't weakness. It's the opposite. It takes incredible strength to deal with daily pain and fatigue while still pursuing education and life goals. What you've done isn't empowerment, it's medical neglect. Amanda turned to my father. Thomas, are you going to let this student speak to me this way? Before Dad could respond, Dr. Reynolds returned. I need to speak with Sierra and Mr. Williams privately about her treatment plan, she said firmly. Mrs. Williams, perhaps you could wait outside. You too, Ms. She looked at Jade questioningly. Jade Peterson, Jade supplied. I'm Sierra's roommate. Actually, I said, finding my voice, I'd like Jade to stay. She's been more supportive than my own family lately. I turned to Amanda. I do think you should leave, though. Amanda looked to my father for support, but he shook his head slightly. I think that's best for now, Amanda. With a last wounded look, Amanda left the room. Dr. Reynolds closed the door behind her. Mr. Williams, she said directly, I'm extremely concerned about what happened here. Sierra is an adult patient whose treatment was interrupted without her knowledge or consent. This could have had much more serious consequences than it did. Dad nodded, looking miserable. I understand. What do we need to do now, Doctor? Reynolds outlined a comprehensive plan to get me back on track, medication adjustments, to address the flare-up appointments with all my specialists, and a referral to a therapist to help with the emotional impact of what had happened. Sierra will also need practical support, she added. The University Health Center can help coordinate her care, but she needs stable access to her medications and transportation to appointments. Jade spoke up. I've been researching this. If Sierra can get a doctor's note documenting her condition, the university's disability services can provide more comprehensive accommodations, including transportation to medical appointments. I looked at her, gratefully amazed at how much she had done to help me. Dr. Reynolds nodded approvingly at Jade. That's excellent information. She turned to my father. Mr. Williams, I'm going to be blunt. Your wife's interference in Sierra's medical care cannot continue. If Sierra agrees, I'd like you to attend her next few appointments to ensure we're all on the same page about her condition and treatment. Of course, Dad said quickly. Anything Sierra needs. I studied him, torn between longing for the supportive father I had known and anger at his betrayal. I need to know this won't happen again, I said finally. I need to know you believe me. He moved closer, tentatively taking my hand. I believe you, Sierra. I always did deep down. I just got lost for a while. I'm so sorry. Sorry isn't enough, I said, pulling my hand away. I almost ended up in the ICU, Dad, because you chose to believe Amanda over me, over my doctors, over years of your own experience with my condition. You're right, he admitted, his voice breaking. I failed you completely. I don't expect forgiveness right away, or maybe ever, but I promise you it will never happen again. Dr. Reynolds checked her watch. Sierra needs rest now. We can continue this discussion tomorrow. Dad nodded, gathering his coat. I'll be back first thing in the morning. He paused at the door. I love you, Sierra, more than anything. After he left, I let the tears come. Jade sat with me, holding my hand as I sobbed from pain, exhaustion, and the complicated emotions of having my father both return to me and remain a stranger. What am I going to do? I asked when I could speak again. I can't go back to that house with Amanda there. Jade squeezed my hand. My apartment has a spare bedroom. My roommate moved out last month and I haven't found a replacement yet. You could stay with me until you figure things out. Dr. Reynolds, who had been making notes in my chart, looked up. That might be a good temporary solution if you're comfortable with it, Sierra. You need a stable environment to recover. I looked at Jade, overwhelmed by her generosity. Are you sure? Positive, she said firmly. Besides, I could use help with my constitutional law flashcards. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. I might have lost my father's unconditional support, at least temporarily, but I had found an unexpected ally in Jade. Dr. Reynolds patted my shoulder. Get some rest. We'll talk more in the morning. As she turned to leave, I called after her. Dr. Reynolds, thank you for believing me. She paused at the door. Sierra, never doubt yourself. Your pain is real. Your experience is valid, and you deserve proper care no matter what anyone else might say. Her words were a balm to my wounded spirit. As exhaustion pulled me toward sleep, I held on to that affirmation like a lifeline. 2 days later, I was discharged from the hospital with a new treatment plan and a folder full of information about my conditions. Dad picked me up alone and drove me to Jade's apartment as we had agreed. The car ride was mostly silent, the weight of everything that had happened sitting heavily between us. Amanda moved out temporarily, he said finally as we neared Jade's building. She's staying with her sister while we figure things out. I nodded, not sure what response he wanted. Part of me felt guilty for causing problems in his marriage. Another part felt vindicated that he had finally chosen me. I called all your doctors, he continued. I've scheduled appointments and made sure the insurance issues are resolved. I also set up automatic refills for your prescriptions at the pharmacy near Jade's apartment. Thank you, I said stiffly. He pulled into a parking space and turned to face me. Sierra, I know words aren't enough, but I am truly sorry. I got lost in trying to please everyone, and instead I hurt the person who should have been my first priority. I studied his face, seeing the grief and regret etched there. I want to believe you, Dad, but trust takes time to rebuild. I know, he said quietly. I'm willing to do whatever it takes for as long as it takes. Jade was waiting outside her building. She helped carry my bags up to her apartment, a cozy 2-bedroom on the 3rd floor of an older building near campus. The spare room was small but bright, with a window overlooking a courtyard garden. It's perfect, I told her, setting down my medication bag on the desk. I can't thank you enough for this. Dad lingered awkwardly in the doorway. Is there anything else you need? Groceries, more blankets. I think we're good, Jade answered for me, sensing my discomfort. Sierra and I made a list of everything she needs. Dad nodded, looking lost. Okay, well, I guess I'll head out then. He hesitated, then added, I put money in your account for expenses, and I'll bring the rest of your things this weekend. After he left, I sank onto the bed, emotionally exhausted. This is so weird. 2 weeks ago, I thought my biggest problem was managing my course load while dealing with my conditions. Now I'm basically estranged from my father and living with a roommate I've only known for a few months. Jade sat beside me. Life comes at you fast sometimes, but you're not alone in this. Over the next few weeks, I settled into a new routine. My medications began working again, gradually reducing the pain and fatigue that had overwhelmed me. I attended appointments with my various specialists, sometimes accompanied by Dad, who asked thoughtful questions and took notes just like he used to. Jade introduced me to her study group, which included several pre-law students passionate about healthcare advocacy. One evening, after a particularly intense discussion about patient rights, Maria, one of Jade's friends, turned to me. You could totally sue your stepmother for what she did, she said. Interfering with medical care, accessing your records without permission that crosses several legal lines. I considered her words. I don't know if I want to go that route. It would mean more conflict, more stress. Not necessarily about suing, Jade clarified, but you should know your rights, the boundaries that were crossed, so it doesn't happen again. Maria nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. Knowledge is power, especially with invisible illnesses. People try to gaslight you, make you doubt your own experience. Her words resonated with me. Amanda had done exactly that, made me question whether my pain was real, whether I was somehow manufacturing symptoms for attention. And for a time, she had convinced my father to doubt me too. I decided to attend a support group for people with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome that met weekly at the University Medical Center. The first meeting was intimidating. I sat in the back listening as others shared their experiences with disbelieving family members, dismissive doctors, and the daily challenges of invisible illness. When it was my turn to introduce myself, I spoke hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence as I saw nods of recognition and understanding around the circle. These people knew exactly what I was going through, they had lived it themselves. Lauren, a woman in her 30s who facilitated the group, approached me afterward. "Your story about your stepmother is unfortunately common," she said. "Family members often have the hardest time accepting invisible illnesses because they want so badly for their loved ones to be well." "She didn't want me to be well," I said bitterly. "She wanted me to stop taking resources and attention." Lauren nodded sympathetically. "That happens too. But the important thing is that you're taking care of yourself now, and you're rebuilding a support system." She was right. Between Jade, my doctors, and now the support group, I was creating a network of people who understood and validated my experience. Each small victory, a completed assignment, an improvement in symptoms, a day where I managed my energy, effectively strengthened my confidence in my ability to navigate this new reality. Dad and I began meeting once a week for coffee at a cafe halfway between his house and Jade's apartment. Our conversations were stilted at first, filled with safe topics like my classes and the weather. Gradually, we began addressing the elephant in the room. "Have you talked to Amanda?" I asked during one of these meetings about a month after my hospitalization. Dad stirred his coffee slowly. "Yes. She still believes she was right to question your diagnosis. She thinks the doctors are enabling you." I felt a flash of anger. "And what do you think?" "I think I was a fool to doubt you," he said firmly. "I've spent hours researching fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome, talking to your doctors, reading medical journals. These are real debilitating conditions, and I'm ashamed that I ever suggested otherwise." His certainty was comforting, but questions remained. Why did you believe her over me, over the doctors, over years of seeing my symptoms firsthand? Dad was quiet for a long moment. "That's something I've been trying to understand myself. I think I was desperate to believe there was a simple solution, that you could just get better if we approached things differently. And Amanda was so confident, so persuasive." "She manipulated you," I said. He nodded slowly. "Yes, but I let myself be manipulated. That's on me." Over time, I learned more about what had happened. Amanda had gradually taken control of the family finances, including my medical care. She had intercepted calls from doctors' offices, canceled appointments without telling Dad, and presented him with selective information that supported her narrative. "I should have seen it," Dad said during one of our talks. "She did the same thing with her first husband." "What?" I was shocked. "She's done this before." Dad looked grim. "I ran into her ex-brother-in-law at a business meeting. He recognized my name and asked how Amanda was. When I mentioned our separation, he wasn't surprised. Apparently, she convinced her first husband that his daughter from a previous marriage was manipulative and troubled, when actually the girl was struggling with depression. The daughter eventually cut all contact with her father." The revelation was both disturbing and validating. Amanda's behavior hadn't been about me specifically. It was a pattern, a way of isolating my father and taking control. 6 months after the confrontation that led to my collapse, I was doing much better. My health had stabilized with proper treatment, and I had managed to catch up on my coursework with accommodations from the university. Jade and I had become close friends, and I had even started dating Jason, a biology major I met in my support group who also had chronic fatigue syndrome. Dad and Amanda were in counseling, but he confided that he was leaning toward divorce. "I can't trust her anymore," he told me. "And she still refuses to acknowledge what she did to you was wrong." I had reached a point where I could think about Amanda without immediately feeling angry. The support group had helped me understand that her behavior, while inexcusable, reflected her own limitations, not mine. "Whatever you decide, I'll support you," I told Dad. "But I can't have her in my life again." He nodded, understanding. "Your well-being comes first now, always." We were slowly rebuilding our relationship. Trust was returning in small increments through consistent actions. Dad never missing an insurance payment, always picking up prescriptions when needed, attending doctor appointments when invited, educating himself about my conditions. One evening, as we walked through a park near campus, Dad asked, "Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me completely?" I considered the question seriously. "I think forgiveness is a process, not a destination. I'm working on it. But even when I forgive, I won't forget. I'll always need to protect myself." He accepted this with a sad smile. That's fair. I just want you to know that I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to you. I don't need grand gestures, I told him. I just need you to believe me, to listen, to remember that my experience is real even when you can't see it. I promise, he said, and this time I believed him. Sometimes the people who should believe in us the most are the ones we have to fight the hardest to convince. But I learned that my pain is valid, my voice matters, and standing up for my health wasn't selfish. It was necessary. The invisible battles we fight may not leave scars others can see, but they shape who we become. And I'm proud of who I'm becoming. My journey with chronic illness continues. There are good days and bad days, flares and remissions. But I no longer face them alone or with doubt shadowing every step. I have my support group, my dedicated medical team friends who understand, and a father who has learned a painful but necessary lesson about trust and advocacy. Amanda and my father finalized their divorce after she refused to acknowledge her role in undermining my care. It was a difficult period for Dad, but ultimately he told me it was liberating. I realized how much I had changed myself to please her, he said. I don't recognize the man who doubted you. I've grown too. The scared, confused teenager who watched her medical support system disintegrate has become a young woman who advocates not only for herself, but for others. Inspired by Jade and my own experience, I switched my major to health policy with a minor in psychology. I want to help change how invisible illnesses are perceived and treated. Last month, I spoke at a university panel on chronic illness and medical advocacy. Looking out at the audience, I saw Jade, Jason, my support group friends, and in the back row, my father watching with unmistakable pride. Afterward, a young woman approached me, tears in her eyes. My parents think I'm exaggerating my symptoms, she said. Hearing your story makes me feel less alone. That moment crystallized something for me. Our greatest wounds can become our greatest gifts to others. The betrayal I experienced, painful as it was, gave me insight and empathy I might never have developed otherwise. It taught me that healing isn't just physical, it's emotional and relational too. Dad and I continue our weekly coffee meetings, now more comfortable than awkward. Recently, he showed me a journal he's been keeping documenting his journey of understanding chronic illness. I want to help other parents, he explained, so they don't make the mistakes I did. Jade and I still live together now by choice rather than necessity. She's applying to law schools with strong health advocacy programs, and I'm considering graduate studies in public health. We joke that someday we'll start a nonprofit together advocating for patients with invisible illnesses. The pain and fatigue are still part of my daily life, but they no longer define me. They're aspects of my experience alongside my studies, my friendships, my dreams for the future. I've learned to pace myself to honor my body's needs without shame or apology. Most importantly, I've learned that my truth is my truth, regardless of who believes it. While validation from others, especially those we love, is powerful, the most essential validation comes from within. I know my experience is real. I know my pain is not imagined. And I know that I deserve care and support even when my condition isn't visible to the naked eye. If you're watching this and living with an invisible illness, or if someone is questioning the reality of your experience, remember, you are not alone. Your pain is real. Your struggle matters, and you deserve to be believed. Have you ever had someone doubt your pain or struggles? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Your support means the world to me, and together we can create understanding for those fighting battles others cannot see. Thank you for listening, and remember to be kind to one another, because everyone is fighting a battle you know nothing about.